Hi everyone, it's Sarah, and it is time to do the April 2024 fantasy and horror book update. Welcome. And look at me, I'm recording on the 2nd of April. It is the month, it is the beginning, uh, and I'm gonna sneeze because it's also allergy season. So before I do, let's get some stuff in. And yes, I will edit out the sneeze when it happens because that's just gross. All right, so what's been going on over the past month? It is April. I am writing. This is Camp National Novel Writing Month, and I am working on In Search of Spellcaster, and it is day 2, and I have yet to write a word in it today. Mostly because I needed a mental reset, and there were some things happening around my house that I wasn't in my writing space. But yesterday I did write, and I wrote about 3,000 words yesterday, which is short of where I wanted to be. So some context, I'm on vacation this week. Why? Because I'm exhausted. It has been a long winter. I got COVID at one point in February, so that wasn't fun. But I think I really needed just a week off to take care of things around my house, start the spring cleaning process, which is part of what happened the day I'm recording, and to give myself some time at the studio. I found that when I not only do I write better at the studio, but I actually do my work better, like the library work, my work from home time. I get the quiet I need when I'm at my writing studio. Uh but I'm not, and I can have the structure of working on what I need to work on. It's a lot of the times, unfortunately, being at my library is a demanding. You need to be able to put out a fire, and sometimes I just need quiet, and you can't get that at the library because that's where the fires are. You can't avoid a fire that needs to be put out if you're on site. You can if you're not at the librarian. These are not literal fires. These are like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Where did this go? Where did that go? I need your feedback on, like, it's very collaborative for me to be in the library, and then dealing with problems. So writing at my writing studio and working at my writing studio means so much more gets done. And I went to the writing studio yesterday to get started on the book, uh, and then I realized I'm doing this process wrong. What I thought I was going to do this month was finish part 3. I had not gotten to part 3 in November when I started the first draft of this book. So my plan was finish part 3 and then go in and start the rewrite on part 1, because I had already thought about what hadn't been working, and then I was going to move forward from there. That is not the thing I should have been doing. I should have just put part 3 aside. I know I have some notes on what I want to happen, but I think I needed to restart part 1 right away. I got about 3,000 words into part 3 and realized I was just info dumping for decisions that had already changed. And I needed to just pick up from part 1, start that rewrite, and move forward from there. So Cedric is attention seeking, or trying to tell me that someone is seeking our attention. No, it's not. So anyway, I think when I get back to writing tomorrow, or maybe after I record this, I go back to part 1 and I just start over, because what I thought I needed to do for part 3, I haven't done in part, like I haven't built up to that. This is why we don't write our stories starting at the end and working backwards necessarily, unless you're writing a mystery, but that's a completely different issue. So I'm going to scrap the plans, but stick with the plan at the same time. This might give me the opportunity to get a little farther into the second draft. Will I get to part 3? Who the hell knows at this point if I will get to part 3 of this book at any point in time, but it doesn't matter. I really just need to get part 1 rewritten so that I can start the actual editing process and preparing this for October, when Samantha, my editor, will start editing it, because this will be what we start reading on Ream and Patreon in 2025. We'll talk more about the Patreon in a bit. Before this, not August, not April, March. was a continuation of the behind the scenes work that really needed to get done. And I said this in my romance check-in, because I do a check-in video for both of them. I realized moving forward, my writing season is really like March to January, and then February and March really need to be my reset. So May to January, February, March really need to be my reset months, where I take care of things behind the scenes. I work on cover designs. I have fun. I just recharge my brain, because I am not the brain that can write constantly. At some point, I need to do the background work. So that's what I worked on. And I'm still working on some of these things. A lot of what had to get done was getting Harshug up and running for the serialization. All my books are going to be serialized moving forwards. They will be published at the end, but the serialization will take as long as it takes. And in the case of In Search of Spellcaster, it's going to take a couple years before that book is published. So if you want to read any of it before 2027, you want to be on the serialization platforms, because that's where it's going to happen. And it's going to happen. I mean, it's going to be multiple chapters a month. So it's just that it's not going to move quickly at the rate I think it's going. So that is something to keep in mind. But I'm working on some updates to my webpage, which is really just sort of a landing page if you ever need all the links. The books, aside from #RescueMe at this point, all the books are on multiple sales platforms. Not just Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo, but they're up on Apple Books. They are on a couple of tinier sales platforms. But what I'm most excited about is that they are on 2 library-centric platforms. They are on Libby Overdrive. You can get your library to request adding them to their collections on the Libby Overdrive content. And they're also on Hoopla, where you can check them out and read on Hoopla. It's taking a little time, but they will be on Hoopla, which is what I'm really excited about, because I'm a librarian. The not being in libraries because I was exclusive to Amazon for so long really hurt. And this year I had a lot of energy around getting these up. And I learned how to do some of them from also doing the romance books. So the only platform that you have to pay for Crowlack on, which is the permanently free one, is Amazon. But mostly because I think I have to edit it again. We'll talk about that at the end. The plans for Crowlack. But the really big thing was to make sure the webpage reflects everything accurately so that you can find the content you want. I rewrote blurbs. I'm still getting those up, but I've rewritten them. I've rewritten my bio so that you have a better sense of what to expect from my books, especially because I write women-centric horror. I write about the horror women do to each other professionally, how we harm each other in our work, not just in our homes. And it really came from a conversation I had with someone about what I love about Shirley Jackson and how her stories are so centered on the woman's place in the home, their homes, their families, and that modern women are really dealing with workplace and finding their roles in the workplace. Are we supposed to be more like the men? Are we supposed to be feminine within that space? Are we supposed to find a combination? Like, how do we balance our professional selves? And a lot of harm is done to women who would like to both stay at home and financially contribute to their families. And that's where things like MLMs and scams and cults come in. So that's a lot of where, especially the horror writing, is. My fantasy writing, on the other hand, is more coming of age, figuring out who you are. I think a lot of women-centric fantasy, especially low fantasy, is about that coming of age moment. But I'm playing with themes that relate to my experience within that in the past. So I'm hoping to, and also the fact that I just want to sit back and with a cup of popcorn and watch drama unfold on YouTube. There is so much happening right now that like Alex Murdaugh's done they're getting into the Idaho case, like just in the legal sphere, there's so much happening. Not even in the internet drama, though there is always internet drama to unfold. We can have conversations about that. so, so I wanted to make sure these things were clear, so you know what you're going to get when you read my books, especially in the horror sphere. So I have updated those details, and I am progressively getting them on the webpage. It's sort of like the background work I do when I'm sitting on the couch. Harshug is chugging along on Ream, but I have now added the Patreon platform as well. It is the same content, the same release dates, but I realize that people aren't necessarily comfortable with the Ream platform. It's new to them. They don't necessarily know how it works, how to find things. Even I struggle to find things. Key, if you want to not pay, but you want to get information, because there will be some public posts, you have to follow the page on Ream, and then you'll get emails telling you what's going on when I post something. Even if you can't read it, you'll see what's getting posted. So I added Patreon because I think a lot more people are increasingly comfortable with Patreon. They might be supporting other creators on Patreon. It's the same exact tiers, the same exact costs, the same exact bonus content. Everything will be one-to-one. You just have to choose the platform that's best for you. So I did a lot of work around setting that up this past month. I'm also getting ready to start creating 2 new commissioned art pieces. There are going to be 2 more tarot cards. One is going to be our spellcaster, and the other is going to be our potion master. We're getting into the god archetypes, who they identify themselves as versus who you identify them as might be very different. For example, our storm god, who will come in a future book, is an archetype, but she is Zeus, and she is never he, and she is pissed that she keeps getting regendered. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to talk about how society shapes our identity, and especially when we're talking religion, and how we become the gods people need rather than the gods people have, especially when we're dealing with ancestor worship and the elevation of a human to a saint or a god. Like we become archetypes rather than ourselves. And she has anger, so I'm very excited for when you get to meet her. But that's many years out at this rate. So that's a different issue. But I'm going to be doing our spellcaster and our potion master. Hint, hint, our spellcaster is actually Hades in Greek mythology. And not every mythological system has an analog for each of these archetypes. The 3rd book in the series, the Enduring series, is Desperately Seeking the Dreamer. The Dreamer has one major archetype, one god to archetype, and that's in Hinduism, that's Brahma. He's the dreamer. He imagines the world, and the other gods make it happen. So so those 2 are coming next, and I have a couple of local artists I really want to work with. The spellcaster, we're going a little more twee with her. She's a girly girl. I know, she's Hades. She's a girly girl. And so I want that to be reflected in her tarot card. And our spellcaster, our potion master is a little broody male. So he gets to, but he's a chef because he's a potion master. So he gets to have a different artist make his card. I am really excited about that. If you want to, one of the things that's happening on Patreon and Ream is a book club. And this is a public book club. I can't give you the books for free, but some of them might be available at your local library if you don't want to buy them. But do you remember Christopher Pike? When I was home in February of 2023 visiting my parents, we went to my storage unit. I'm putting quotey fingers around this. My parents got both of my sister and I storage units. When we came home from college to put all the crap that we had collected at college but had no place in our childhood bedrooms, or in my sister's case, she moved to New York. She couldn't take all this stuff with her. So in my storage unit was a box of books which included Christopher Pike books. This was not my Christopher Pike book. And I know that because I don't think I read this one, even though, and it's from like when I stopped reading his books, which was like this is from 1997. It's on the copyright page. I had not continued reading him past my high school graduation in 94. So this was my sister's copy in my storage unit. Very suspicious, very weird. But between this and the Midnight Club being on Netflix, I was like, you know what I need? I need more Christopher Pike in my life. And then his publishers decided, yeah, you need more Christopher Pike in your life. This is the Remember Me trilogy, which was my favorite. That and Chain Letter, I think, were some of my favorites. I didn't love the Midnight Club, but if you watch the Netflix show, you saw a lot of his books get built into their stories, which I did love because I remembered many of those. So right now, if you join Patreon and Ream, we're reading Remember Me #1. And I don't love this cover because I remember the original covers, but I appreciate very deeply that they tried to update but pay homage to these original covers with the bold off-color text. I miss the sort of cursive, but as my colleagues often remind me and my friends, teenagers can't read cursive the same way my generation could because it's not necessarily taught in the schools anymore. So they had to sort of not just modernize the fonts and the colors, but make sure it could be readable to everyone. So I get it. Maybe this isn't as easy for some people to read as the all caps, but I do appreciate the attempt to do it. So we're going to start with book 1. Join me over there to do it. I'm going to read it this month and we're going to talk about it. I'm very excited because I have forgotten everything about that, but I do remember his writing being so cheesy. And there is a podcast. I don't think they're doing any more episodes of it. They sort of stopped after Remember Me ended. I mean, not Remember Me, after Midnight Club ended. They like did episode by episode. They're on Patreon, but they're also on all the podcast platforms. So we'll take a glance at those so that we can see what other people thought of that. Because his writing, I recall it being atrocious. And I have a soft spot. Like, you can be a bad book and people can still have a soft spot for it. I think Twilight also proves that. So join me on Patreon or Ream for the book club, even if you don't want to pick a tier. But pick a tier because that's where the book is. All these books are going to be serialized. I promise you, it will be Harshug's going to come out next year, yes. But In Search of Spellcaster isn't coming out till 2027 in book form. So if you want it, you need to be on one of the serialization platforms. What is coming? Oh, there are 2 big things that are coming next. I have an idea. I always say that. And I've been struggling with what comes between, like, what are the short stories I want to write? And I've always had this idea in the back of my head to explore the horror of the 10 plagues. So if you are not at all familiar with Judaism and the Passover celebration, because most non-Jews only know Passover into the extent that it is part of the Easter celebration, and that Jesus had one last supper with his disciples before the crucifixion. That last supper was a Passover Seder. And I think most Christians know that, like, intrinsically that was something, but they don't necessarily know what happened in the Seder or always what happened in Egypt. I think people who read the Old Testament have a version of what happened in Egypt, but every Passover we center a lot of the dinner around these 10 plagues that were visited upon Egypt by God because they wouldn't free the slaves who were the Jews. We're not going to get into the historical accuracy of all that. That is what it is. There are 10 plagues. They get increasingly worse as, of course, God is angrier and the Pharaoh is willful and won't do what he wants. And it isn't until they slay the firstborn children of the Egyptians and the lamb's blood goes on the door of the Jewish homes to mark them as safe, protected, and not to have children. The angel of death does that. I love death. I miss death. And I kind of want death to come and have a say. And I thought he was going to get to be in Search of Spellcaster, and he will. But at the very end, I can't open it up with him. He knows too much. I can't tell you everything he wants to share. He did it. I wrote a whole chapter with him opening it up, and he was just ready to like bleh, info dump all my secrets. I can't let him do that. But I can let him have some plagues. So we're gonna explore the historical horror that death has been able to do, because death might be neutral now. He has not always been neutral. He is angry. He is angry about a couple things, but he has been much more historically angry. But these aren't going to be historical religious stories about the plagues in Egypt. They're going to be more, it's going to blend this women-centric workplace interpersonal relationships with other women horror that I'm writing with death. He's going to have a little bit of darker fun, which isn't something he gets to have all that often. He's supposed to be neutral in his mind. So there will be 10 plague stories, and this might bridge the gap of time between the end of Harshug and the beginning of In Search of Spellcaster, depending on how quickly I move. I always get anxious about how quickly I can move things. I want to have the first part ready for Samantha by October, and I'm like, that's tomorrow. And then my rational brain is like, it is April. It is not tomorrow. You have 6 months, sweetie. Calm down. But I also like, I want to have content just in case, and what happens if, like, I want to have stuff for all of you to read. The hope is that we do the 10 plagues, maybe it becomes bonus content, or maybe it is content that everybody gets to read, but it will be a short story collection when it's done that people will be able to buy, like they can #RescueMe. Will all the stories be connected? I don't know. It could be that death is all that connects them. It could be that that there is like with the horror series, that there's sort of interconnected threads. I don't know yet. I'm just beginning to plot this. Also because if you've joined me on the rom-com adventure, you know I have re-edited, and in one case almost entirely rewritten the books in that series, except for the last two. The last two that have been published have not gotten rewritten because I've gotten better as a writer, and they reflect my current skill set. That is not to say I won't ever rewrite them, but I don't need to at this point. I like them. I like all of the books at this point, but when I read something I wrote many years ago and I see my improvement as a writer, I want to fix it. I want to give you the current version of my writing in these stories, not necessarily the historical one, because there are errors. And while I thought I had worked with good editors, I sometimes worked with editors I didn't really like to save money. One thing I'm going to be doing is looking at Crowlack specifically first. We're just going to run it right through ProWriterAid, Grammarly kind of tools, just to see what it might pick up on. I ran the first chapter through it after someone brought just a little mistake to my attention that should have been picked up by these or an editor when an editor went through this, and that didn't happen. So I'm now in this sense of I've got to fix it. So not this month, probably next month. This might not be till May. Will be the re-edit new edition of Crowlack. There will not be content added. I'm not going that far. I'm just tightening it up and cleaning it up before I make it officially perma-free and start doing some big giveaways with it. Right now you can do like swaps with me for it if you are another author, but in general, I really want to start promoting this more aggressively, and I want it to be the best version of itself I can do at this point. That's not to say I won't edit it again. Because I very likely will. This is the freedom of indie publishing, is that I can keep improving this book with new editions. Uh, I mean, I went and I realized we needed a whole new chapter of Bribery and added that. And there's a whole extra chapter in there that if you listen to the audiobook, you don't get because it happened after the audiobook got made. So we'll start with Kralak. We'll make sure it's clean and nice and grammatically correct, and the right words are used in the right places before I put it out there again. I know this seems like a lot going on. This is just where my head is at. I am focused on the writing and some of the background work this month, but I hope you'll join me to do the book club. Remember Me. We might do all three over the course of the book club. So if you want to buy the box set, please do. But check your libraries, see if they have copies. Because they have republished this, libraries might be able to get the copies of the ebooks. If your library, Libby, or Hoopla doesn't have access to them, tell your librarians. They will add it. They just don't know people want it. They have the budget to add it. So add it. Ask them to add it. If you're in a consortium, like a whole group of libraries paying for it together, figure out who to talk to. Ask your librarians. Do not hesitate to ask your librarians for what you want, because they'll get it if they know someone wants it. What they love is people reading the books that they pick. What frustrates them is picking something and then nobody wanting it. They want to spend money where it will do some good, and that is giving readers books they love. So thank you for joining me for this very long. I was thinking I wouldn't have a lot to say, and then I turned out to have so much to say. I hope to see you on Patreon or Ream to do the book club, or to talk about Harshug chapter by chapter as it is serialized for you this next year. And I'll see you in May. Bye.